Education Station is a conversation with the industry leaders who help create the next generation of drivers. What's on the blackboard? Mentorship, apprentice programs, trucking clubs, and creating a common lingo that turns the trainee of today into the million-mile driver of tomorrow. And Radio Nemo of North America is going to give you the cheat sheet. Now, here's Jimmy Mack.
I think because of the man that sits in the middle of it, it is one of the best places to actually learn how to become a truck driver in America. Go to tulsatech.edu. You can find them on Facebook at Tulsa Tech, over on the Tube of You at Tulsa Tech Center, and then, of course, at Instagram at Tulsa Tech. The person I'm talking about is the professional truck driver training coordinator. He is also as good of a friend to the show and as good of a friend to Dave, Nemo, and I as you could possibly imagine. Donnie Tulk joins us this morning. Tulk of Tulsa Tech. Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Jimmy Mack. How are you, sir?
I am great. We talked about this last week with our good friends over at the Milwaukee Area Training College. We've had this conversation been going on the last. You know what I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about, Drayevsky.
We're talking about. Who you're talking about, man.
You know who I'm talking about. We got into the weeds on this, and I wanted to kind of continue this conversation because you and I have talked about your program. People have a sense of that. Donnie, a lot of people are caught in a dilemma that you often find yourself in order to get funding in a public sector kind of thing about the numbers you can produce in regards to graduation. At the same time, you want to make sure that the men and women that you produce are quality drivers who then recommend your programs that other people will hire the people that graduate from you. That's part of the equation. What I wanted to talk about today is how do instructors, how do coordinators, how do you forge a relationship with your partners to make them understand if you don't treat our students right, you're not going to be partners with us much longer? How do you look out for your mentees and your students and your trainees?
Well, basically, and I know who you're talking about at Milwaukee, Dan. Dan is actually the vice president at NAPFTDS. I was honored to be instilled as the president in April at our annual conference in Daytona. So, Dan and I talk really closely all the time. Our programs mirror each other pretty much. But we've talked about this several times. And the thing you have to do is, we're very fortunate that the recruiters and our industry partners that come in here to talk to our students, we vet them out. We do a lot of research on them. And to be frank and totally honest, Jim, there are companies out there that knock on our door every day, and we have to tell them thank you, but no thank you, because of the reputation that they may have, as far as how they treat their drivers. I was listening to you a little bit earlier, and you were talking about companies out there that basically we'll take on a new driver and use them up basically, and then we're looking for that next meat in the seat, lower. We don't have to pay them as much. It's a lower wage, and move on. And we vet these industry partners that come to us, and we have some very reputable companies. If I said the names, all your listeners would know who I was talking about. We also have regional and even local companies that come in. But one thing what we do is we start telling the students they have to come here before they start the program and do an orientation class. And we started telling those students at that time, look, here's a list of everyone that we basically prefer to do business with. These are our industry partners. We want you to go in, you start researching them. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them. But they'll be in soon to talk to you, and you can ask them. Now, here's something that I'll say. I spent, in my past life, I was director of recruiting for a large, very large tank truck carrier. And the thing about it is you have to be, that recruiter has to be invested in that school as well. You can see the ones that are invested in the schools. There's the ones who the recruiters will give their cell phone number to a student and say, if you have any issues, call. And they're the ones we also, if we have a student that calls us after they've went to work for a carrier and they call and say, I don't know, I'm just having trouble with my trainer, what do I do? because all of our instructors will, they keep in contact with their students, and that we get phone calls, but they will say, what do I do? Well, we can call that recruiter. We're on a basis of where we can call it, pick up that phone and say, hey, Joe, the student so and so, he's having some trouble. Can you help us out on that? You have to build that relationship, and that we invite our recruiters that come through. Hey, if you're just driving through, come by and see us and have a cup of coffee. Let's just sit down and talk about what's going on with your company, what's going on in the industry and stuff like that. So that's why you got to start building that rapport and that relationship with the people who come and see you, and talk to your students. And that way, if you're going to get a recruiter that comes in and spends 10 minutes and throws some swag at the students, they're not doing a good job. And I've got a good enough relationship with the people, the powers that be at the carriers that deal with the field recruiters, that I can go and I can say, hey, this person needs to spend a little more time here. They're not giving a full overview of what they need to do. So that's the key thing, building those relationships with your stakeholders, to make sure there's a smooth transition with these students, into the industry.
It's a neat thing too, because one of the things when I used to be a teacher in a different subject a long time ago, I would tell people, I would say, I want you to either make a data spreadsheet, or I want you to get a really nice addressed notebook. And your teacher, once you graduate, your teacher's deets in regards to phone number, email, all that kind of stuff, and the first place you go to do an internship or to take a job and all that. You write that stuff down, because that really creates the network. The fact is, if I've always said that if somebody leaves an institution of education without contacts, what distinguishes a good learning institution, regardless of what it's teaching, is not so much the program or the location. Those are great things, but it's the faculty. It's your instructors, and it's the network of associations you make. How many people in your environment can pick up the phone and get you an interview? How many people in that network can actually look out for you and protect you and do exactly what we're talking about? And one of the soft skills that a lot of people don't pick up early enough, I think, and you're talking about creating it as an approach, is the idea that my number is important, your trainer's number is important, the first recruiter that brings you in, their number is important, and making sure that those three people, the trainer, the person who runs the program, and the recruiter of your first job, are all kind of interconnected, is the beginning of you building that network of relationships, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We tell our students that this is not, you're embarking on a new career. You're not embarking on just another job. So that career starts, just as you say, all those pieces and components got to come together, to make it work. Because the thing about it is, statistically, there's a lot of new drivers that are gone away from the industry, within the first year. And I was listening to you this week, and I can't remember if it was Jody or who called in, was talking about the mentorship and the training that the students get, after they come out of school, and also, the length of the training and that. Our program is a little bit longer. It's 10 weeks long, and then we have an internship or apprenticeship component to it at the end there. But one of the things that we do, as far as our instructors and that, they have attended orientations alongside the student, and they've went into some of our industry partners, and they've sat in that orientation classroom and went through that whole week of orientation to get a feel of what the student goes through. And we've been asked by those industry partners, is there anything we need to change to try to help this be an easier transition process for the student? And that all goes back to, like you were saying, the relationships you build with those folks and the trust. The big thing is the trust. We're trusted that, that we're going to provide a well-trained student. And there's an agreement that we have, and it's signed by both parties, that the carrier is going to agree to train the student properly once they get on that side. And that, so you've got to look at that too. You've got to look at, what's the training plan for a new driver that comes to work for you? What's it going to be like? Can we sit in your orientation? Can we come out and observe? Things like that. Because, knowledge, you need to have the knowledge of what's going on that you can talk to these students about and basically say, yeah, I've been there. I've seen what you're going through. Here's what's going to happen. Stick with it a day or two. It's going to get better. 'Cause there's a lot of different things. This is a whole lifestyle change for students. So, that's where you go through there. And I tell the recruiters, give them the good, the bad, and the ugly about the company. When you come in and talk to our students, just tell them, lay it all out on the line. You might be home every weekend, but you're going to be, tarping every load or something. Tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly about it, and be totally honest. And I think that builds that relationship even stronger. And luckily, our students, on our percentage rate, stay in the industry longer than some of the other ones. And I think it's because we've built those relationships with the industry partners.
I'm going to ask a question to take us into the break here really quickly. I'm going to set this up. I want to talk when we come back with Donnie Tulk about kind of determining how to help a student find their passion driving job and not make the mistake of getting into an area of trucking that actually makes them not want to do it anymore. We'll unpack that a little more. I'll give you time to marinate on that. Donnie Tulk joins us, of course, as one of our regular reoccurring people on Education Station. We'll be right back after these messages. Subscribe at RadioNemo.com.
In a video game, if you get enough experience, you level up. And when you level up, you gain more skill. And with enough skill, you beat the boss and win the game.
Sounds a lot like trucking, doesn't it?
Except in trucking, you don't beat the boss, you become the boss. And if you want to be the boss, you gotta meet the boss.
And that boss? Carrier's Edge boss, Jane Jazrawi.
Want your drivers to level up? Carrier's Edge has the training, comprehensive safety, compliance, and best practices on one website. It's a simple subscription with no contract and no commitment. Learn more. Try it out. Level up. CarriersEdge.com.
Hey, come on! We're starting the game!
All right, I'm coming. Wait for me. CarriersEdge.com.
You don't put a mechanic under your hood who doesn't know rigs, and you don't haul loads for a partner who doesn't understand freight. So why are you trusting your finances to folks who don't know trucking? If you want to run like a business, then ride with TaxesForTruckers.com. You know the road, they know the books. It's a one-stop shop for financial pomp. They lift you up, take a look underneath, and get you rolling again with full-service accounting and tax services, all the while consulting with you. Call 888-TAX, the number 4, TRK, to stop overpaying taxes today. TaxesForTruckers.com.
I'll take you, boys. Down along the
If that special class, by the way, is with Donnie Tulk, then you're in great luck, especially if it's 8:19 on the Dave Nemo Show. And speaking of timestamps, that timestamp is brought to you by the Multi-Service Fuel Card. They've been helping fleets manage the situation with fuel since '78, which means they were there when fuel was really tight and the Arab embargo was in the action. Over-the-road trucking companies have been looking to those folks to provide them with quality customer service, generous lines of credit, and a nationwide network of fuel-saving truck stop locations. They've been delivering that since 1978 at neverrollalone.com at 819. Donnie, we are back here on Education Station. One of the best friends this show has, one of the best friends this segment has, our friend over at Tulsa Tech. Donnie, did you follow my question there? Basically, I was asking, how do you, a student, you want to make sure that a student drives the way they want to drive. I don't mean in the style they want to drive. You got to drive safely, but that they end up, tarping. They end up, driving the routes that they want to route. And everything can't be perfect. You don't get your dream job, but you also don't want to have somebody end up in a situation where they end up having a truck driving job that is the one they don't want to have, that actually takes them to places that make them want to quit the job. How do you figure out what a student wants, and then how do you help match them up in a field or a sector that eventually gets them behind the wheel of the kind of truck that they want to drive?
Yeah, I understood what you're saying there. And what we do is, of course, you have to listen to the student naturally. and we make suggestions in that. Maybe the student says they want to pull a flatbed, but they don't really know what's involved in that. And a lot of times what we'll do in the researching, we tell the students, hey, go out there, research this company, go to YouTube and see if one of their drivers, some drivers out there put out some very good content on YouTube, about the company. Hey, this is my second week working at ABC, and here's what's happening. And they kind of follow through there. So go through there and look at that and see what they're having to do, because they're going to show you pictures. They're going to be honest about what's going on and research that. We tell them too, as well as things, keep up with things in the industry. One thing about it, just like you were talking about earlier in that, with the research and the YouTube, we tell them to go to radionemo.com on YouTube and look at that. Look at the segments on there, because there's a lot of good information that will tell kind of steer you in what direction you really want to go. We've had students that said, I want to go out and pull a tanker. That's what I want to do. I want to go out and pull a tanker. But then whenever they realize some of the chemicals and things that tanker drivers carry, they're like, whoa, I don't want anything that can, eat my lungs up. So I'm going to go and I'm going to pull a drive in or something, or I'm going to pull a flatbed. It's the same thing, We have them go to those, there's a lot of good content. You all put out some great content on YouTube. We have them go to your page. We have them go to Follow Drivers, and we'll look at it as well. So show me what you pulled up here, and they'll ask questions. I had a question this morning from a student sent over a screenshot. They seen somebody posted it wasn't real. It was like for a 30-speed transmission. And it was all different, a gear pattern. I sent back, that's not real. Don't be looking at that, So we look at some of that content too and try to help steer them in the right direction, of what they need to be looking at and seeing, because there's a lot of stuff out there, some great, some not so great, and that's our main focus, because we tell them, do your research. You need to stay where you're at once you go to work for this company for a minimum of 1 year. Don't look around unless this company has just treated you like a piece of trash. And fortunately, in other carriers we deal with, we ever have to worry about that. But, plan on staying there at least a year, if not longer. Make this your new career. And get on YouTube, get on there and see what Jimmy Mack's saying about different situations, on his YouTube channel, and get over here on, what's the guy's name, Long Haul Paul, and things like that, putting out different things. There's a lot of good content out there for them to decide what they really want to do, because you got to be happy doing it. That's the big thing we tell them. You have to be happy doing it, and it won't seem like a job. You'll love getting up in the morning, cranking that truck up and going every day.
One of the things you mentioned earlier before we hit the break, and thank you for that, Donnie, one of the things that we were talking about, you had mentioned, is really making sure that when you find partners in the industry, which it sounds like you're looking for, is an education partner. And what I was kind of curious about, so if you get approached by a company, and we'll call them company XYZ. So XYZ Trucking approaches you guys, and you guys do your research, and it turns out that there's some people that say some really great stuff about them, but there's also some stuff that kind of gives you pause and concern. When you onboard a new company, do you have a conversation with them and say, look, this is what we expect of you guys, and this is what we're going to ask you to do before we can actually bring you on? There are some concerns here. Can you answer them, and can you take the steps either to fix them or make us feel assured that it's simply somebody with an axe to grind kind of trashing you on social media? How do you onboard a new company in regards to getting them in touch with your students?
Well, one thing we do is we pull their CSA up. We look at the company as a whole. And if we see that they're having a lot of violations for, vehicle maintenance or something like that in that category, we talk to them about that. Our students are going to be out there. They're not making money if the wheels aren't turning. I'm not earning, right? So
Right.
If they're going to be, getting pulled into a weigh station, getting DOT'd, being in a shop, for long periods of time, how have you guys have you addressed this? Because you're up there at the threshold or something for that basic. Things like that we look at. We'll pull their CSA score. We pull the CSA scores and show them, on our smart board in class. Okay, here's what it's looking like. So, yeah, we do vet them out like that. We do vet them out as far as, home time, just say, for instance. We've talked to some of your drivers, and we do. Myself and Stu, if we're at the truck stop, we'll talk to a driver that maybe a company's wanting to come in. Tell me what it's really like out there. The good companies that come in and recruit students out of our program bring drivers with them as well. When the recruiter comes, a lot of times they will bring a driver, have a driver, meet them here with the tractor and trailer, and have that driver talk to the students, because a recruiter can get up there and talk to you all day long about the great things about their company, but you're going to find out the real stuff, what's going on from the driver. And these drivers will give these students their cell phone numbers too. We've had several that have done that, and they can call them, and they're kind of a mentor in a way to them.
Donnie, we're going to change. We're going to wrap this up here with Donnie Tulk, of course, of Tulsa Tech. I actually got a chance to go back and listen, and Dave and I and Dean Croak actually recorded an 8-part podcast that we're putting together now as we speak. I actually went back and listened to the old Road Gang things of Dave doing a very different kind of DJing. I wasn't aware of this, and my memory of it wasn't as sharp. And when I went back and re-listened to it, it would be a song followed by Dave, a song followed by Dave. It really was a back-and-forth style, which is not the way normal DJs do it. Do you remember the first time you ever heard Dave on the radio? We've talked about this off the air, but never on the air.
I heard Dave Nemo the first time on the air. Golly, Jim, I must have been. It was in the 70s, the early 70s. I was probably 13, 14, 15 years old. Riding with my dad in the truck, and that because Dave was on. He was on weekends at first. when Charlie was on through the week. And then as time went on and Charlie had retired, and Dave filled in more, and Dave was weeknights, I should say. And, John Parker was on then. So it was probably around 1976, 77 in there, And I'm not ashamed to say it. I'm 60 years old now. I just turned 60. So that's been quite a few years ago. So I've been riding with the Road Gang for a long time, and we'll continue to do that. And it's just been a great experience. I mean, I remember those days you're talking about with Dave, and then a song, and then a comedy bit by Hudson and Landry, and then Dave, and then the song. Really cool. I mean, it just brings back a lot of great memories for sure, as far as that goes.
It's a really unique format, by the way, because usually it's like 3 or 4 songs followed by the DJ, but with them they had to keep the information kind of floating and flowing. Donnie, I want to thank you so much for making the time for us. You always doing a very busy schedule to make your way over here to Radio Nemo. Really appreciate you. Go have the best of days, and we'll talk soon, both off the air and on. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
You too, sir. Donnie Tulk is a regular recurring guest on Education Station, one of the 3 or 4, as a matter of fact. We'll be back with our friends Norita, A Good Tailor is Hard to Find, and, of course, George Fighting Irish O'Connor for Washington Trucking Week.